Hello, lovely listeners. This is your favorite dynamic duo, Rae Johnson, the Sunshine.
And Lauryn, the star. And today we actually have a trio.
Yes, our very special guest, who is special in the sense of also being our best friend, Nicki.
Hi.
Today we've decided, amongst the three of us, to talk about mental health for Lauryn and mine senior year, but for Nicki as a grad student, as she's going to be graduating this December. So we're very happy for her, as much as we're also sad to not see her as much.
Yeah.
But we know she's going to go far in life.
We certainly do, but I don't know what I'll do without you our last semester here.
Well, I'm gonna miss you guys, but honestly, the job application process has been brutal, to be honest.
Yeah, I bet it is, especially in this economy with just such dilution or how vast there are of jobs, and yet you have to have freaking 5 years of experience before you get a decent one. It's just ironic they don't count college experience as experience.
Right, where am I supposed to go get the 5 years of experience? Like, where, Narnia?
Unless I get a job, and then they won't let you get a job unless you have it.
And that's the whole purpose of the whole 4 years of college, or in that case 5 years, considering grad school too.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you actually get the real world experience preparing for what it is you want to do, so why would they not count that? Like, hello?
Yeah.
I mean, honestly, just stop requiring a bachelor's degree if you want those 5 years of experience. Like, where are we supposed to get them? It's kind of an unrealistic expectation.
What's the point of taking out all these student loans and having scholarship funds and all of this? And even if you're from a very privileged family and you don't have to worry about that as much, to pay for an expensive school or even a state school for it to basically go nowhere as far as your resume.
Right.
Even with internship opportunities too,
Mm-hmm.
which are just as invaluable as the regular academic training.
Exactly. Paid or unpaid, it should still count.
Mm-hmm.
I agree.
Speaking of which, with you bringing up job searches, I bet also, as much as it is annoying to not have, like, security right now, I bet it's a mental drain as well to just be like, oh my god, like, I know I'm very competent and I'll go do far better once I have a position, but it needs to be offered to me first.
Right, I'm struggling with this right now because I know I'm confident as an individual because I have resumes, because I have all these resumes sent out, and I have all these internships that I've done and throughout my undergrad degree, and I do have work experience too, and it's just very frustrating.
I just don't get if they truly want to promote young, intelligent, and skilled women, that they're basically keeping us all, and even men our age, at a disadvantage by having all of these prerequisites that literally are impossible to obtain with their very niche standards. It makes no sense to me, and I'm sorry you're currently going through it, and we're going to at some point.
I feel like our entire generation is.
Yeah. But I would say my advice, though, is still continue to strive for the top, because at my internship this summer, I interned with Visit Tampa Bay, a marketing consultant in downtown Tampa, and one of the ladies I worked with told me that even just starting out in your career, like whether you're fresh out of college or graduate school, don't feel that like it's a prerequisite that you like have to apply for like an entry level job. Don't feel that that's mandatory. She said that always apply to be, you know, at the top, like always strive for the best, because you never know like where that will propel you going forward.
That, and you should always have the mindset that you deserve the best. Because if you strive for the best, but you don't think you're capable enough for it, then you're pretty much doing it in vain, because you mentally won't think that once you obtain it that you deserve it. So you have to know in your heart, with all you've put into things up to that point, that it's one of those things where it's like, well, it's about daggum time.
Mm-hmm.
So, Nicki, I wanted to ask you, since you are a grad student, and we're thinking of becoming some as well. I mean, I know for me personally, I think Lauren probably is thinking as well, but I don't want to assume. What is something that you wish going into the program, as far as like management of balancing school and social life and all that, especially because a lot of the classes tend to be evening, because also our friend Jason's dealing with that as well, getting out at like 8 sometimes. How have you balanced that where it's not too overwhelming and like a culture shock, if you will, when having this new setup?
Well, personally, I prefer night classes, so this kind of worked out for me in the best. I don't like getting up at 7:50
No.
and not being able to concentrate, so this really worked out for me. And in terms of balancing, I mean, I would get up around 10 maybe, do a little bit of work, and then go work out, and that's how I would spend my day, like just doing work in the mornings or the afternoons, and I wouldn't sweat too much about it because the work is very manageable.
So for you, it seems more of a stress-free thing than more of like, oh my god, I'm a grad student and this is like a lot.
Yes, I mean, I'm on my last semester, so it's a really chill schedule.
All right, and I'd like to ask also, how do you think the master's program here has prepared you for your aspired field?
Well, my master's program, I'm taking a bunch of useful classes. I'm taking a class about negotiation and persuasion.
Ooh.
So I feel like it's very important for women in the workplace to know how to negotiate up their paycheck because women are at a historical disadvantage of being paid unequally.
Yeah.
And so being able to negotiate will help close in the gap.
Absolutely.
That's very true.
Yes.
Good on you.
Yes.
We know how to advocate for ourselves in the workplace.
And you can teach us some of those tricks now, right?
Absolutely.
Basically, you gotta just ask a bunch of like open-ended questions, and then they'll get a little irritated, and they'll give it to you. Then they will give it to you.
It's like, if she's gonna keep going, so whatever, let's just give it to her.
That's what they want, yes.
Hashtag persistence.
Well, in one of the books I'm reading for my classes was about an FBI negotiator, and he negotiated hostages. And in the book, he was saying, we have your son, give us $1 million, and he was like asking, how do you know my son's still alive? And he kept asking questions about his son. He's like, fine, I'll give you your son. They were just annoyed.
He's like, a dog with a bone, he's not gonna let it go.
Well, asking you shall receive.
Amen, there's power in asking. And speaking of books, I know you've jokingly told me that you wanted to like start a book club or like one of those like fandom accounts for books. How has that helped you like relax and alleviate stress from just everyday life with reading different books?
Well, I love to read, first of all. I like to read horror books because that somehow relieves my stress and helps my mental health. I can't tell you how. And I also write Wattpad series stories.
Goodness, yeah.
They're hilarious.
There are.
I double over in laughter and my ribs hurt where I feel like I should have qualified for a core workout. These stories are so funny.
Well, comedy has always like helped my mental health. Even when I'm down, I'll just write a Wattpad series story about like anyone and anything. And specifically, I don't want to say the names, but
but we know.
But we
No, no one else needs to know, but we do.
Yeah. If you know us, then you know as well.
Yes.
Also, with writing those stories and also reading them, do you think with reading horror books, even though your comedic Wattpad stories are a different genre, do you think that's helped you with your writing overall?
Well, I've done a comedic horror Wattpad story. So it kind of bled over into my Wattpad stories in some way. And I also read a little bit of romance too. I read a lot of Colleen Hoover books, and I read Taylor Jenkins Reid. I love all those books too.
That's awesome.
Oh.
And I actually, I'm so sorry, Lauren. I was actually gonna ask you a question.
Sure.
Because we don't really see each other that much, even though we're both comm students, but we have like different sub-genres, if you will. Since you're more journalism, I'm popular culture and media production, which actually we got an email that with media production entrepreneurship, the two of us are going to merge next semester.
Yeah.
So I'm like, that doesn't make a difference for us, and it's not like freshmen are going to really know any better. So it's interesting how it'll affect the sophomores and juniors. But all that soliloquy to say, with your journalism major, and you kind of asked Nicki this in a way, what are the courses that you took where you're like, oh my god, this is going to help me become that much better when I actually do my job in the future?
Interesting you asked that. I'm currently taking a feature writing course, and what I've learned so far is feature writing is totally different from journalism writing, which I'm still trying to comprehend because, you know, I've been, for the past 3 years, that's what I've been accustomed to.
Right.
But in feature writing, we don't use the inverted pyramid style like we do in journalism writing.
Huh.
And it's, let's say, how do I describe I guess for feature writing for me, it's really a better opportunity to help people like share their stories, which is something I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
And one story I'm currently working on right now for that class, it's about what it's like to be a minority at this particular institution.
Oh wow, yeah.
Yeah, so my
Literally close to home.
Right, yeah. So my whole goal in selecting that topic in particular was to, it's not just for myself, it's more
Yeah.
so to empower others and feel that their voices are important and that they do have a right to share their stories.
And that's beautiful because I have that same exact mindset, which is why I want to interview literally around the world in my own boat. Is so, and I always use this as an example that I just kind of pulled off the top of my head. Joe the mechanic that's 5 miles from the marina deserves to brag about his business as much as any celebrity and senator has the right to talk about their lives. And just, the everyday man or woman should, if wanting to, talk about themselves because blue-collar people really are the backbone of America, so they deserve to be featured. And obviously I interview prominent people as well because it'd be fun to know about their exotic lifestyles, but I don't want to be one of those people that just limits it to those types of people because every vocation is interesting and it just needs to be featured in my opinion, which is why, other than with the love of the TV show The Voice, why my kind of moniker is Rachel the Voice, because everyone deserves to share theirs.
They do, yeah. And to reiterate that, I think I took mastering the interview last year. As a matter of fact, I interviewed you for one of my projects.
Oh my
too.
god, yeah, I remember that.
Great, yes.
Oh my gosh, memory unlocked.
Yeah, it was wonderful. So I can say like some really important takeaways from that class were, well, first of all, when you're interviewing people, what I've learned is you don't start off with the hardball questions immediately.
Yeah.
You have to develop trust between yourself and the person you're talking to. So start off with small talk, and because you want them to just feel comfortable like opening up to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's funny you bring that up because my mom is literally a master at that. Because even my dad says, yeah, she's a better saleswoman than me, than I am a salesman. And
Girl
he
power.
says that, yeah, girl power, let's go queen. He says that, yeah, within pretty much 5 seconds of her sitting down with the customer, she already has built a rapport and knows exactly how to sell them a product that fits their needs. I'm like, I hope I have at least a quarter of that talent when I interview people. Shoo.
Oh, I think you already do.
Oh, you're so kind. Speaking of interview, pivoting back to you, Nicki, with us asking you questions, I am awfully curious if you could change the way the job market works, other than like the prerequisite of experience needed, like 5 years. What's something that you would change? Do you feel like, oh my god, this would make job hiring much easier for me and others in my situation?
Get rid of the 5 years of experience.
Period.
Period.
Well, it's bogus because a lot of people entering that position may not have 5 years of experience.
Because there's only so many internships along with the course workload that you can do in order to gain that. They act like if you have to pretty much be a part-time student and not a full-time one, but you have to be full-time at least a few semesters to graduate.
Right.
It's a no-win situation for the hirers and the hirees.
Nobody wins.
You know, and I like to ask you also, what's your perspective on diversity in the workplace, the importance of that?
Diversity in the workplace, that's a good question. Obviously I think, like, I've seen studies on this, but they should, like, black out the person's, like, name, so maybe they'd have more diverse candidates and have a less biased perspective.
Maybe just like a very, very skinny, so to speak, description of like their age, not like race or anything like that, but just like age, experience, stuff like that.
Right.
Not even like marriage status, because technically you're not supposed to ask that now. Back in my mom's day, you could, but I feel like that would be decent.
I think so too.
Because I feel at this point, along with a lot of Netflix Hollywood-esque productions, they, quote-unquote, in the workforce, cast diverse people such as black women, gay men or women, whomever, just for the sake of meeting an HR status quo. And that's not how you should do it. It should be by their expertise, their willingness to work with others, and you shouldn't have any of those factors into the equation of just solely, oh, because they fit this aesthetic, let's hire them.
Right, or like on the contrary, like I remember doing research studies in high school where employers would review resumes and applicants with an ethnic sounding name, they were less likely to receive a callback or an interview as opposed to interviewees with non-ethnic sounding names. So I think that needs to be rectified too, because you can't judge a person's abilities, strengths, or their intelligence simply based on their name or anything like that.
Absolutely.
Get to know them personally.
Especially with you bringing that up about ethnic sounding names. I forget what her name was, but I'd heard a story from my mom about this black woman who was doing phone interviews for jobs, and she would almost automatically get hired over the phone because she sounded like a white person.
Yeah, that actually reminds me of an experience I had because 2 years ago during as we know, two years ago it was the presidential election, but there was also
How can you forget?
I know, right? It was like one of the most important in U.S. history. But there was also a Senate election. So over winter break, my dad and I, we worked with the NAACP to contact voters in Georgia, encouraging them to vote. And my dad, he just told me, I'm not one who's going to like tell people, oh, you have to vote for this person or that person. Although that particular time we did, but overall, it's just I want people to just practice their civil liberties, you know. And my dad told me to just tell all the black citizens I contacted that as black people, our lives depends on this. So I said that, and I told there was one woman who I said that to, and she said, "Wait, you're saying as black people, our lives depends on it?" I said yes, and then she goes, "Well, I can tell just by talking to you over the phone that you're not black." Yeah.
Wow.
I know. You know, I've gotten that before, but of course I was very professional about it. I said, "Yes, ma'am, I am." She said, "Oh, you are?" I said, "Yes." And then she goes, "Oh, well, I already voted." But
it's like, I can show you a picture if I were able to.
Yeah, but you see your point, though. They think they can automatically assume your race just by listening to you over the phone, and that's not always the case.
Yeah, and it's funny that you brought up Georgia, because I'm sure some of my family on my mom's side probably have gotten some of those calls. But it is so sad that it is a common theme and thread through society, any society, no matter how advanced you are, that this is a thing. And it's funny because there are a lot, since we live in the South, even though Florida is considered a different breed of South for you two. You know, I'm in the Bible Belt here in North Carolina. There's a lot of Bible-thumping preachers and all of that. And ironically enough, a lot of people that don't truly know, and even some of those preachers, Christianity, are some of the most judgmental, closed-minded people. And the thing is, Jesus told us to love your neighbor as yourself. He didn't say judge someone because of their sexual orientation, their ethnicity, their cultural likes, because Ruth, as I actually got to Jamestown for a choir event, so I reheard the story of Ruth in the service. Ruth was one of the very few, if not the only, foreigner that was not Israelite that was in the lineage of Jesus Christ. She was a Moab. And back then, they were considered enemies. She was the one that stayed with Naomi, saying how loyal she was going to be to her, and said, "Wherever you go, I will go. Your God will be my God, your people my people." So how in the world are we as a society just going to ignore stories like that, whether you believe the Bible's real or not, and just assume the worst out of people just because you don't understand them culturally, or however you don't understand them? It's just beyond me. Because me as a Christian, I'm never going to say, I think less of you because you're this way. The only reason I would quote-unquote judge you is if your character is in question. And I can separate people's actions from who they are as a person. But I cannot, if it's an established pattern, quote-unquote, like, forgive someone if I can tell they're not willing to change. Right. And it's never had to do with skin color, language barriers, nothing. It's always just been who they are as a person over time. And it's clearly established that they're that way. It's not an off day.
I agree, and I think some people are very closed-minded, and they're not willing. That's why our country is so divided, because no one is really willing to educate themselves or learn about one another's cultures, and that's a problem because we
Yeah.
do live in a melting pot. We really do.
Mm-hmm. And
I think-
ironic.
yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, you're okay. Continue.
Ironically enough, with you bringing that up, it's just funny because there are just so many people that if they were given the chance, they would excel, and probably like the cure for cancer would have been found by now, kind of thing. But skin color was the main issue of contention, you know? And it's just hilarious to me how, with the media trying to divide people across America, it's like, well, no, if you look at a local community, whether it's at a church or like a function or however you commune, those people get along just fine, and they have different political beliefs, they have different beliefs of other kinds, and yet they get along. So why is the media acting like all of America is just this divisive and negative and closed-minded and unwilling to see perspectives, when that's not really the case? It's just because it's sensationalized and a lot more fun to talk about than the everyday good people that aren't like that.
Yeah, the media is definitely a driving force behind the division in our society. Because what I've found, and my dad, he has a master's in sociology, so he's taught me that people who have grown up their whole lives in a homogeneous community, they're not accustomed to diverse groups of people, you know, whether that be in regard to race, religion, sexual orientation. Therefore, they depend on the media to guide their own perceptions of other people.
Yeah.
And the thing with the media is, and you know, I know I'm a journalist, but yes, we do tend to centralize the negative aspects of things, but I don't think that's really beneficial when it comes to bridging those gaps and uniting people, because all you just see the bad. You don't see the good that people have to offer in society.
And speaking of good things in media, with you bringing up earlier, Nicki, that you've had internships, I remember you telling me about how you were promoting some companies, so I would like you to elaborate on that. Like you said, an ice cream shop at some point?
Well, I do a blog for a real estate company, and I had to write a blog about an ice cream company in my hometown. They just opened up. It's called the Dalai Lama Ice Cream, and it's an ice cream place based out of Los Angeles, California, and it came to my hometown.
Oh,
So
wow.
I write real estate blogs too, in addition to Wattpad stories.
So, like, you know, letting off steam and also being productive at the same time for a
Yes.
paycheck. I love that.
Yeah.
With that experience, what was some of your favorite things to write about?
Wattpad stories or the real estate blog?
No real estate.
I would just say more local events. I would say more local events. I mean, I like writing about houses, but like local events are fun to write about too, and new openings.
Yeah.
And going forward, do you see yourself becoming a professional author or writer?
I think that day will come. I
Aw.
think it will.
I do too, honestly.
Yeah.
You're very quick-witted and eloquent at the same time, but also the other hand, with being eloquent, you say it in a way where it's easy for other people to understand. You know, you're not too wordy. Because I remember when I was doing mock trial in high school, they'd say you have to, as an attorney, not use so much flowery language, but say it in a way that at a 5th grade level someone could understand that's in the jury. So
Right.
it's not a demeaning way. It's just to be like, hey, don't get too technical. Make sure people can actually understand.
Right. When I went down the law path, I mean, I was a little bit too flowery because I was a political science major, and you had to use like more political science jargon. So I had to unlearn that, and then I had to unlearn my law jargon for my master's degree in business and communication. So I had to like break down my language.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I also like how straightforward you are in general. You don't sugarcoat. You're brutally honest.
Yes.
You're very to the point. I love that, and I think we need more of that. Like, we
Yes.
need more writers like that.
Absolutely. And with being brutal to the point, you also say it in like a nice way. Like, you're not a jerk about it, which is also much needed too. Like, I feel like when people say brutality when it comes to like the point of words, people are like, oh, they're just gonna be a jerk and be honest. It's like, no, you can still be nice and honest, and like all three of us do well with that in our own different ways.
Right. Yeah, you're very nice about it too. But I was also thinking, like, sometimes, like, I'm sure we've heard the saying, take the high road, but sometimes you gotta, like,
Put people in their place,
yeah,
to
fight
say the
fire,
least.
fire with
Yeah.
fire at times, and I can tell you have a gift when it comes to that. You really
Mhm.
do.
Yes.
Honestly, you have tact for sure.
Yes.
Yes.
I'm glad that has rubbed off on me. Please
Same.
don't lose that because it's hilarious.
Yes, we live and thrive for this. And
Yes.
speaking of which, to circle back more to like the mental health aspect, when it comes to being tactful like that, when drama situations, no matter like where you are in life, as far as like us being seniors and you a grad student, how do you? Because all three of us are the kind of people that are dragged into it. We're very much like the people that they come to for advice, and then because they can't handle it, they kind of throw you into the fire of whatever's going on in their lives. And I've gone through that recently, I must attest, and it was crap.
Ooh.
How do you handle those kind of situations where it doesn't like ruminate in your mind and affect you to the point where like your performance in school and work and stuff like that isn't like noticeably different?
Honestly, I just shut off my phone. I go take a nap. I do something to decompress. I work out. I box.
No, you box.
I do box.
Girl, you need to teach me.
I do box. It releases all my frustration.
We need to have like a private session with Nicki, don't we, Lauren?
Yes, we do. We can build up some upper body strength.
Yes. I lift weights too.
Help me
Yeah,
with
you
that
do.
too, yes.
Strong woman.
Yes.
Mhm.
I shut it off. I take a mental health break. I mean, I love giving advice to people in any situation, but sometimes, unfortunately, some people do get dragged into like drama situations.
That, or when you do give them advice, they don't follow it, and then they come back to you again. You're like, well, what's the point? You're not going to do
Right.
anything I say. Nicki, thank you so much for
Thank
being
you.
here
Thank you.
and being such a wonderfully gracious guest. And Lauren and I, the Sunshine Star, will see you next time.
Absolutely. Shine bright. Enjoy your week.
Lauren.